I was a couple of kilometers away on the edge of the foothills of a mountain sort of range from the vehicle, and got lost. Couldn't find the vehicle in the dark because it's out in the middle of nowhere. My clothes were starting to freeze on myself. Just made it back to the vehicle, and sort of dragged myself into the falconry venue, blue and half dead. Everyone had to kind of get me warmed up.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, and we're about 8 episodes now into this Cape Falconry Club series. Hope you all have been enjoying falconry from a new perspective from yet another country, and many thanks to them, as always, for helping to make this series happen. Also, big thank you to the Falconry Heritage Trust for their contribution to helping make this series happen also. Without their small grant to help fund some of the airfare and other travel expenses for this trip, it probably wouldn't have happened. So if you'd like to go and find out more about the Falconry Heritage Trust and to support their cause, which is to continue to help preserve falconry heritage around the world, just head to falconryheritage.org. And also a big thank you for the continued support from Bobby Yaga Crafts out of Poland. If you haven't checked out his stuff yet, highly recommend you do so. You all have heard me brag about his products by now here on the podcast, but I love how he continues to try and come up with new ideas and refine and improve the products that he already offers as well. It's definitely worth your time and your money to check out his equipment. It's definitely second to none. So it's hard to find a much better handcrafted quality equipment than his. So if you want to get some new anklets or jesses or anything for your birds for the upcoming falconry season or for future seasons, definitely check out his products. And if you want to contact him, the information to do that is on our website at falconrytold.com. And you can also find him at Bobby Yaga Goshawk on Instagram. And this episode with Zayin is another good one in that it offers another perspective from a falconer with a pretty decent amount of experience and also experience flying some of the, at least what's considered to be harder species to fly in the black sparrowhawks and things like that in South Africa. And it was good kind of picking his brain a little bit about that, as well as just finding out some of the other experiences and stories that he's had and his time in falconry. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this episode with Zayin, and I hope you all enjoy. As always, thanks again for continuing to listen to this series, and here we go. Well, welcome, Zayin.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time and for joining us. You said you just got here?
Yes, I just drove in from Cape Town to the meet venue now, about 2 hours ago, so just arrived.
Did you come the same way that most of us came, like through the mountain passes and stuff? Do you take the same way, or
yes,
do you go
I
around?
did. I actually needed to drop off a thank you gift at one of the farmers that I hunt on, or the farms that I hunt on, so I kind of did a little bit of a detour, but pretty much through the same mountain passes as everybody else.
That was interesting going through that with hurricane winds and stuff the other day when we were coming up. I think poor Tian, he was a little nervous at times.
Yeah, and I saw that they actually narrowed the traffic down to one lane in one of the passes now because the road was washed away underneath. So they're still doing maintenance and repairs to the passes. Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned something about that as we were driving up, and it was very comforting to hear that. You know, as we were driving through the hurricane winds and everything else, that in one spot basically the road had vanished and whatever, and they had just kind of fixed it. And I mean, to someone who doesn't really know these areas very well and is only very remotely kind of oriented to how your infrastructure works here, it's very comforting. So.
Yeah, it's a big catchment area for water, so when you have a bit of torrential rain that comes down, everything flows together and then floods through these narrow channels to get out of the like box valleys, so to say. So it gets a bit chaotic with heavy rain. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, the terrain around here has been very nice, though. I've really enjoyed it, and like I said, it's been very enjoyable just kind of seeing, just kind of how different. I mean, I don't get to see stuff like this at home, so anytime I get to be around mountains and big lakes and all these different things all in the same area, like it's kind of like kid in a candy store for me, nature wise.
It is. It's beautiful country out here, and particularly now this time of year, everything is green with all the rain. Dams are full, rivers are flowing. It's pretty. It really is nice. Yeah. This particular area of the Cape Falconry is called Droehoek, which is an Afrikaans word that says a dry corner, so to say. So in summertime, it can get pretty nasty and bone dry, and there's no water sources anyway. So nice time of year.
Yeah, someone was saying, I think it was earlier when we were out. I think someone was saying that a year or two ago, or sometime recently, there was a big drought around here.
Yes, if you can remember back, probably about 4 years, I don't know, round about there, Cape Town almost ran out of water. Yeah, we can almost down to day zero. Yeah,
had no idea.
Yeah, Cape Town was almost one of the first major cities to run totally out of water. So we were in a crisis sort of a couple of years back, and now you would never say so.
Well, and it's been interesting too, getting used to the power going off a couple hours a day, and the load shedding. That's what you call it?
This is Africa, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Between that and not having any water, I think that I would probably, I don't know. Like there is pretty much every aspect, but the whole electricity thing and whatever. I think I really could be happy living in this kind of scenery and terrain, and especially with y'all's falconry down here, and how close you all are to all these different areas that are really nice to fly. I could totally see myself living in an area like this, but the but the extraneous factors of the power just kind of going out, randomly, and it's just expected, and just kind of it's interesting. It's very interesting.
It's unfortunately it's this, like the analogy of a frog in a pot of water on the stove that gets hotter and hotter as people living in Africa where we are now. You just become accustomed to it, and you just go with whatever's thrown your way, and you just learn how to kind of adapt. So someone from the outside that comes in is quite sort of taken back to say, like, wow, you guys are operating in this condition, doing that, and you're out here with no power and doing that. You kind of look around and think, well, it's just the way it is, So yeah, but it can be a bit of a pain in the ass.
I can only imagine. Yeah. And as far as just where you've lived, I mean, you said you've kind of been in and around Cape Town the majority of your life.
I was born in Rhodesia those days, and shortly afterwards their independence to become Zimbabwe, and did my pretty much the first 9 years of schooling there. So I was fourth generation born bred Zimbabwean, Rhodesian, whatever you want to say, and then came and finished my last 3 years of schooling in Cape Town. And I finished school 1998, so quite a while back. And then since then just established home and life and everything else in Cape Town.
Well, and early on, I mean, what were there any other? I mean, aside from the, I guess, potentially obvious ones, but I mean, what was it like for you, kind of transplanting from there to here at kind of a younger age like that? Was it?
It was a culture shock, big time. Yeah, we sort of came from a farming community in the Lowveld in Zimbabwe, and when the political unrest got too much with the Mugabe regime, and that we decided to come and immigrate to South Africa. We had a lot of family that had done so ahead of us, but we came back to our roots, so to say, because our kind of 4 or 5 generations ahead of us came from the Cape anyway, so it was kind of a full circle to move back again.
Yeah.
Took a while to readjust, but once you realize that it's home and your new home, I think as a kid it's easier to readjust than kind of moving as an adult, but yeah, now it's all I know.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter what country you live in. I think you're just because of lack of overall life experience and attachments and things like that. I do think you're right. I mean, as a kid, it would be easier to probably, be malleable to those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But especially, I mean, in countries like this that are, a lot, every country has its challenges, to some degree. And,
for sure.
But I mean, so what part of your life then did you kind of discover that falconry was a thing then? And what point did you start getting interested in all those things?
Well, in Zim as a kid, I obviously was born and raised out in the farming areas, and my father managed a big 5,000 head of cattle for the sugar estates in the lowveld of Zimbabwe, a place called Triangle Limited. So I grew up in ranch lands, doing everything that a farm kid would, and my kind of interests lay with birds in general, eventually leaning more towards birds of prey as I got more into it. I also sort of collected eggs as a hobby. So as fun as it was, it got me into a lot of trouble. Climbing the wrong trees in the wrong places. But that kind of led me to appreciate birds of prey, being outside in nature with a little knapsack on my back with a couple of sandwiches and enough water for the day, and I just disappear, And once I moved to South Africa, finished school, decided to pursue a more kind of intimate relationship with birds of prey. And I looked up the local Falconry Club in my area, and by chance, Dr. Adrian Lombard happened to live 5 minutes away from where I lived. And long story short, I ended up being his apprentice, and that's where it started 20 years ago.
20 years ago. About how old were you then?
Sure. I am now 42, so I would have been 22, I suppose. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So still relatively young, but I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I know of some people that have gotten into this at a really early age, teenagers or even sometimes younger. And sometimes I wonder how they've been able to do it, except, of course, the obvious ones that have been multi-generational, falconers and stuff like that. But
natural path to follow, you grow up with a mentor in the house, so to say.
Yeah. And I mean, so how did things, start then? I mean, what was your early experience like, first getting into falconry?
Well, getting into falconry initially, I did my year's apprenticeship, I think it was 2003. And that was you're basically just a tag along wherever anybody who was going out to fly hawks. Once I joined the club, anyone was going out to fly hawks or hunt or a falconry meet or any kind of get together, even if it was just to go and run dogs or train puppies or anything that was related sort of to pointing dogs or hawks, or was my interest. I just absorbed as much as I could. Dr. Lombard has got a library second to none in his office with books and information and stuff. So I would take a book or two or three and just devour it, and then come back 3-4 days later and be like, okay, what else have you got for me to read? So he had an immense amount of literature. which I just went through as much as I could. He's a very practical person in that as well. So kind of took me through how to make my own equipment and become self-sufficient. So I give credit to him because I had a great apprenticeship under his mentorship. And I think by the end of the year, I had done everything, read everything, seen everything. So from a non-falconry point of view, I had done every theoretical thing you could possibly think of, So, and then from there, it was that we have a entrance exam for the apprentice to kind of just know that you know what you're talking about and doing, that you're not going to sort of end up harming a bird that you get. And by the following year, started actively doing falconry.
Yeah. So, and like I've talked to some of the other guys about this week, but so yeah, at that point you're what, like a D, like the D level or whatever.
Our grading system, the way it works is a D grade as an apprentice.
Yeah.
And then once you have got your muse built and you've spent a season in the field with your mentor and fellow falconers and learnt, and you've got your equipment and perches, and you've basically have everything in place other than a bird, then you would be eligible for your first bird, then you would be graded to a C grade. And then as a C grade falconer, you can actually have your bird, go out, hunt, and actively participate as a falconer. So, and then you build yourself from there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Like I said, I keep trying to hammer these details into my head, just because it's so kind of, it's sort of the same, but yet quite different from how, we do things.
Yeah.
So.
We go like kind of CB and up to A grade, which is a master falconer. And I think you guys have just got 2 levels or 3 levels, 3
yeah.
levels. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. Apprentice, general, and master. Yeah. Which, and ours is more of honestly kind of like a time, like putting in the time more than like having people grade you and things but I mean, you're still kind of being evaluated by your sponsor and other people you're going out with and stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes ever so harshly. But I mean, the ribbing sometimes is what we both, live and dread, live for and dread.
Yeah.
But is it kind of the same here too? Kind of, it seems like, just from my experience with everyone so far, that this community really isn't any different than most other communities, in that you're gonna take your share of lumps and have to spend your time in the barrel, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of being in you remain an apprentice. you remain an apprentice for many years, even though you climb the ladder and you do it sort of. I think the only time that you get out from under the banner of an apprentice is when you get one yourself. So if there's a field meet, you're always the one that's got to go and make coffee for everyone and go and cook the meat out on the barbecue, so to say, and you got to get out in the rain and open the gates, and so you're the dog's body, and but it's good fun. It's all there's a lot of respect amongst peers, so that's good.
Yeah, it's kind of like, getting that job, and for a while as the new guy at the job, you're kind of like, the new idiot up until the point where you get a newer idiot in, and then all of a sudden, it just
the focus is off you.
the buck is passed, so to speak.
Yeah.
No, that's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, once again, I've talked to some of the guys about this here as well as other places, and that it really is funny how the falconry community is different. Very different in some ways from place to place, but the fundamentals they're pretty much the same.
Yeah, there's a common thread that runs through it all, Yeah, for sure.
Well, and so what were some of the early experiences that you had with some of the different species that you flew?
My very first bird was a greater kestrel. It was, I mean, its natural prey is going to be insects and mice and small stuff, So it was more about learning how to handle it, getting into the actual daily routine of being a falconer. That's the first thing you do when you wake up, and it's the last thing you do before you go to bed. You now have this child in your life, so to say, that you've got to look after. So that was a good learning curve. And I mean, I would go out and fly it, ridge saw it and thermal it and do whatever I could. It was more, like I said, just getting into the rhythm of how falconry was going to become a lifestyle. And then from there, we have an African goshawk, which is a great little starter bird for everybody up and coming. Whether you end up flying long wings predominantly or whether you end up flying short wings doesn't really matter. An African goshawk is a little bird that's got a heart the size of a lion and will basically bind to anything. And you can walk and stalk, you can chuck it out a car window, you can do anything with it. You can have it follow on, it builds your idea of like your perception of hunting itself. I am a hunter. I've been hunting since I can't even remember growing up in that environment. And I mean, that's what we are as falconers. You got to be a hunter first and foremost. So it's a little bird that helps you develop bushcraft. You've got to learn how to use it as a tool to catch quarry, and you catching little stuff, mostly small birds and inflay systems and river courses and little thickets. It happens all around about you, and so it's fun, it's exciting, and you put all those factors together, and it's a great starter bird because it's not a difficult bird to handle. It catches pretty much anything, and it's fun, and it teaches you a lot in the beginning of how to read hunting setups in order to kind of make successful kills. So I think that's where we've all started here in South Africa. And then from there, I stuck with the short wing side of things. Dr. Lombard was more the short wing falconer than the long wing falconer, just because where he lived. He flew a lot of black sparrowhawks, so that was my natural kind of path to choose. I had his mentorship and the terrain and the quarry and everything that was available to me. It was a kind of a natural decision to go that way. So for a couple of years, I flew passage black sparrowhawks, and then I think eventually after about 4 years or so, I ended up flying a lanner falcon and a black sparrowhawk together in one season, which was, if I could say, a bit of more than I could chew. It's an understatement. But then I started flying more long wings. At that stage, I had moved to a different part of Cape Town, more open country, more wheatlands, and it just was big sky country. So I kind of dabbled in the long wing side of things through passage lanners, passage peregrines, tersels and females, just to also broaden my own experience base in that, So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I keep hearing, like, the more I talk to you all this week, the more I keep hearing kind of common denominators, like as opposed to, in most states, for example, in the States, you're going to start off with either like a red tail, a passage red tail, or, a kestrel or American kestrel are kind of like your two options, as far as, the starter species that you're allowed to fly. And like I said, it sounds like, like your kestrels here, and then, the African goshawks are kind of like the equivalent to that here. And, it's, like I said, it's interesting how, once again, the similarities are there, but, with completely different types of approach or species.
Yes, no, very much so.
Yeah.
I think we never had Harris hawks and the likes 10, 15 years back, because we just never had access to them, and as they have sort of been imported and brought into the country over the last sort of decade or so, they've become a game changer, like they have around the world everywhere else. They have opened up a whole different avenue for us as well. You don't necessarily have to be the purist that only flies passage black sparrowhawks or passage African peregrines. So if you didn't live in an area where they were accessible, or your time constraints or your work or where you lived or didn't allow you to fly those types of birds, things like the Harris hawk, and that has opened up a whole different avenue for different guys, which is great, because they would never have been able to enjoy falconry as much as they do now because of it. So I think one or two of your guys in species that have been imported has now benefited us too, Yeah.
Well, by the sound of it, I kind of wish that we were able to get some of you all's species a little bit more readily as well. I mean, I know there are guys that have, imported and bred, like Eurospars and,
yes.
and, different species. But I mean, it's kind of few and far between in the States, people that have attempted those things. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be really neat to be able to fly some of your species in the U.S. too, because it sounds like it would be a really nice alternative option for some of our accipiter short wing species too. I mean, because there's definitely, like our Cooper's hawks and things are pretty challenging to fly as well.
They are a version of a Cooper's. They just real head cases, but once you get to understand how they work and what they think and how they do stuff, and they're a real wind-up toy, and you need to know how to deal with it. And when you can channel that energy in the right direction, then it's phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. So they're not as robust. Talking about the black sparrowhawk now, they're not as robust as your guys, Goshawks, and that their feathers are really sort of they break quite easy, and you can't if you have to have a black sparrowhawk get a hold of a rabbit or a hare, you're going to be imping an entire tail sort of that evening, So they're bird specialists, and but I'm sure that the guys that are hunting quail and partridge and pheasant, things like that, a black sparrowhawk would be fantastic opportunity for them to fly something different, Yeah.
Well, and kind of, if you don't care, I mean, just elaborate a little bit more. That's one thing I have heard from multiple guys since I've been here, is just how, high strung you all's, black spars are.
Yeah.
And of course, one, like we just briefly talked about, the Cooper's hawk is probably the closest thing that we have to that as far as that. But, just out of curiosity, what has been your approach to, since you all don't have imprinting really as an option and stuff here, what's been your approach then to dealing with some of those more challenging, passage, birds and just share if you don't care. I'm kind of curious to see what your outtake is on that.
Yeah, a passage black spar just wants to self-destruct all the time. It's fairly highly strung. So if you've got to utilize a hood. If it's not a really calm full imprint that is bomb-proof and pretty chilled around everything, it's going to bait itself to death. It's going to turn itself inside out. If you have any equipment that is not ideally suited to its temperament, it's going to wrap itself up, tie itself in knots, break all its feathers, and it's going to happen in half an hour. You're going to trap a fresh passage bird, and the first time you take the hood off, you just unleash all hell, and then in an hour later, you now got bent feathers, and it's hanging upside down, doing its usual sort of tantrum antics, and it doesn't it doesn't stop for a while. So you got to utilize the hood to strategically. You've got to. It's not a coochie-coo kind of bird that you handle and the hooded and unhooded and walk around with it. And my experience is you've got to almost treat it as a very clinical relationship in the beginning until it has settled with its surroundings. I used a barrel perch or a round perch, if you want to, for a different term. It worked very well for me. Anything where it can bait, so like a bow perch on the ground where it can just bait and bait and bait, it will. You get leg scale damage. So barrel perch, utilization of the hood. Your muse is going to have to be pretty much blocked out. If you can, like a longish flight pen, if you're going to free mew it. If you're going to free mew a passage black sparrowhawk, you're probably going to turn it into mincemeat in sort of by the end of the first day. They're very difficult to kind of manage. But if you've got a good mentor, someone who has walked the road before you, you can avoid a lot of upsets before they've started. But in saying all of that, the only reason why we go through all the damn headache and walking on eggshells, so to say, is because once they get with the program, it's kind of jaw-dropping stuff. They are absolutely amazing. For them to fly down pigeons in level flight and stuff is nothing. And your muskets will fly larks and long claw and snipe, ringing flights sort of out of sight. Your females will take just open slips of 500-600 meters to flocks of guinea fowl or franklin right out in the open before they even start. So they're incredibly versatile, and once they know what the program is, they're an incredible amount of enjoyment. They have this. They're not as I might get shot down for this, but they're not as clever as a goshawk in that it'll sit there and it'll think about what it's doing and it'll strategize and then kind of come out of a tree and then do some clever maneuver and end up cutting the corner and catching a rabbit in some way or form in a forested area. They just like point and shoot. So they will just fly their wings off until they get it. That kind of blind tenacity, which is great. I mean, because it's exciting and they give absolutely everything. Those are kind of the positives that go with all the high maintenance upkeep that you require when you're actually handling them. Hunted hard and feed it well, and it's generally sorts out most of your problems at home. Don't fly it once or twice a week, keep it on a perch, and you are going to be up to your eyeballs in problems all day, every day. So it's got to fly hard and kind of burn that low level stress off, and then it's a happy bird to kind of have.
Yeah, it sounds very familiar. Yeah, sounds very, very familiar. And I think that's probably part of the reason why a lot of people, including myself, have failed in the past with Cooper's hawks. And I think it's just a different mentality, a different mindset. And it sounds like it's pretty pretty similar though to the mentality that you would have to fly, both successfully. Yeah. But I mean, there's kind of theories too also in that. I mean, since they are such high-strung birds by nature, I mean, do you think the black sparrows are kind of similar to, like our coops, and that there probably is just a much lower percentage of birds that would be good falconry candidates?
I think that they'll all be pretty good falconry candidates. Look, I mean, we all know they're not all created equal, but I think that there are definitely methods that can make your life a lot easier. I think going the imprinting route, maybe raising them socially with siblings beforehand and actually hacking them. There's various ways that you can minimize the kind of highly strung temperament, which would make it a lot more pleasant.
But since you guys don't have access to do some of those things, then I mean,
yes, I mean we can't just go and get an eyes from a breeder and sort of work from that platform. We've got to either trap a passage, or you need to motivate sort of taking an eyes, which is a serious amount of jumping through hoops. And I mean, my personal view was I flew passage birds because we had the privilege of doing so, and you don't really need to teach it anything. You just need to sort of get it to cooperate with you, and the rest it already knows, which is great. And at the end of the season, you let it go, next year you fly another one, trap and train another one, which was great. So I enjoyed it, and the fact that I got to trap and train a fresh passage every single year upon year, which was, and you get to fly a musket one year and fly a female the next year, and one is better at this and that. So it develops your kind of experience in that as well, which is great. Oh.
I know for some falconers that probably sounds like hell, like having to
do it again and again and again.
To train a new bird. I mean, there are a fair amount of falconers like yourself that really enjoy doing that. But some people, like to have a break every so often and be able to actually interview birds and have them already kind of familiar with the program when the next hunting season rolls around. But I mean, I commend you for having that as something that you have really enjoyed doing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's everybody just likes what they like. But I just, like I said, that's one of the reasons I like doing this, because I enjoy finding out what makes other falconers in particular tick, and what some people like, even if it does sound like self-abuse in some ways. I mean, having that would be like us, only being able to
look, the family's got to be on board, because there's I won't lie to you, there's definitely a lot of times which are quite stressful and highly strung, because everything's got to be perfect all the time, so it puts a lot of pressure in that on yourself. It's definitely not the chilled, laid back falconry that an imprint would give you.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's each horses for courses,
Yeah, I mean, I can think of probably a large number of falconers that in the U.S. that basically they were like, well, you pretty much have to trap and train a new passage coop every year, and whatever. There'd probably be like a massive amount of dropout in the sport. I say that half jokingly, but no, that's neat. Thanks for sharing some of those insights, because
no problem.
I think like I said, it's neat whenever you encounter people that have kind of been able to sort of mold and adapt to, like being able to, I won't use the word formula, but like come up with a way to not only, deal with some of the more challenging species, but actually enjoy it. So, it sounds like you fall into that category. I mean, are you still trying to fly those particular birds then, or are you more of a fan of different species these days?
I moved my residence about 5 years ago to right on the edge of the city limits, specifically for falconry. Our main type of agriculture around the outskirts of Cape Town is wheatlands. So we have pretty much a large monoculture of wheat, and that gives us really big open flat spaces. Okay, well, I'll say big open flat spaces. It's not quite the prairies of America, but it allows us to fly long wings pretty close within in 15, 20 minutes outside of the city limits, which is great. So I've, over the last couple of years, flown predominantly long wings, just because it's the opportunity that I've been given now, where I stay. And again, it's just exploring another avenue of falconry, and I'm flying my first kind of exotic peregrine, and I'm flying a Joe peregrine hybrid as well. At the moment, I've got 2 birds. Again, that's something new for me. So the Teersel peregrine is intermediate in his second year now, and the Joe peregrine in her first. So having fun, something new, do it for a couple of years, and who knows, maybe go back to a short wing after that. I'm not a be-all and end-all short winger or a be-all and end-all long winger. I enjoy everything about it. I'll do one side of it for 4 or 5 years, and then kind of mix it up for a year or 2, and then go back again. Well, our modern day lifestyle also kind of controls where and what and how we do falconry. So I mean, I have got to take that into consideration. So if I know for whatever reason my work scenario for the following year is going to be taking me to this place and that place, and my time is going to keep me in an area which is going to be more wooded areas and short wing territory, and then I would look to fly short wing for the year. So I think my lifestyle and my work also depicts as to what I fly, and the quarry that I'll get, that's going to be around about me. I mean, you got to take those things into consideration. Not to say like, oh, I'd love to fly this and I'd love to fly that, but at the end of the day, you are governed where you live and what quarry you have, and that should be the bird that you choose, you know. So because you can hunt it and serve it to the best of your ability, you know. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of funny though, like the hardcore accipiter guys though, I'm sure you've heard, you know, the people that, you know, you may or may not know of that fly, you know, some of the different species. I mean, I know like for me, like most of my friends that are avid goshawk guys, you know, they're like, well, if it's not gray, it's just never going to blah, 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 you know, whatever. And it's just, you know, it's cool talking to somebody like yourself that, you know, just, it doesn't really matter what it is, you know, just, they're going to enjoy it, you know, and,
are you having fun? Yes. Okay, good. That's all you need. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's kind of shift focus then. And, you know, this is the part where we usually like getting a 1 or 2 good, memorable, you know, stories or experiences that you've had. I mean, you have been doing this for a while, so I know you probably have plenty, but what's like the 1 or 2 stories that stick out in your mind as kind of like some of your more memorable experiences, either, you know, hunting or flights or with a particular bird that you've had?
If I had to think about it, the first thing that jumps to mind is actually not sort of a, how can I say, like a particular, let's say, top class bird that's made 150 kills in a season or thing, but I do have a story that comes off the top of my head. We have our national get together once a year, generally like this time of year, June, July, and it's generally held in the middle of the country, in sort of the Free State province. We went up there. It's incredibly cold for us in Africa. Sort of minus 10 degrees Celsius is incredibly cold, you know. So and there they hit double figures minuses during the meet time. I ended up I think I was flying a lanner falcon at the time. It ended up catching a thermal late afternoon and vaporizing and not coming down, and ignored everything else. Ensued in a couple of hours of tracking session, and as it started getting dark, got signal on the top of a kind of a small mountain range about maybe 2-3 kilometers away. Now the Free State is just almost like grassland, just flat open grassland. So I parked the vehicle and ended up walking with telemetry as far as I could. I wanted to pinpoint it exactly where this thing was, so that first light the following morning I could come back and kind of lure it from wherever it was. Ended up tracking way further than I intended. About sort of an hour after dark, eventually found where this thing was, pinpointed it. By that stage, I had sweated my clothes wet, and then the temperature just plummeted to minus stupid in like a short space of time. I was a couple of kilometers away on the edge of the foothills of a mountain sort of range from the vehicle, and got lost. Couldn't find the vehicle in the dark because it's out in the middle of nowhere. My clothes were starting to freeze on myself. Just made it back to the vehicle, and sort of dragged myself into the Falconry venue, blue and half dead. Everyone had to kind of get me warmed up. So so that was it. As a falconer, it's not all about the pitch and the stoop and the quarry, and sometimes it's about survival as well. You know, you kind of end up putting yourself in situations where you wouldn't normally end up. But so that's kind of the first one that kind of springs to memory, which falconry it kind of will take you to. Yes. Remarkable birds flown, some really good black sparrowhawks, making 200 plus kills in a season, kind of birds that are just those 1 in a million, which you end up kind of always looking back at. From the long-wing side of things, having really incredible flights here. I mean, our most challenging quarry that we can fly here with long wings would be our sandgrouse. We have really great sandgrouse walking in certain parts of the province. It's a real kind of trek to get there, and it's a lot of planning, and birds have got to be really performing well. And when you get it right, really memorable stuff.
Oh, you'll probably end up being like most people that whenever I ask them that, and they're, even if they have time to prep ahead of time, they always think, it's funny because after like 10 minutes after we ended the recording, I thought of like 3 great stories I completely forgot about. And yeah, I mean, that's usually what I hear.
Yeah. Now, there's stories about survival, as I've just saying. There's stories about sort of champagne flying with long wings out of sight on sandgrouse in big open sky, and just other stories of camaraderie with falconers together, all kind of coming together and enjoying themselves at a meet, and watching different birds fly. The guys up country who fly in the more suitable type of terrain fly a lot more eagles. So yeah, that's another whole kettle of fish altogether. That's catching bunnies sort of at night on the back of a vehicle with a spotlight with 6, 7, 8, 9 youngsters on the back, all overexcited, and also there's so many avenues, so many different memories and styles of flying. As you say, I'll probably have 3 or 4 good ones when we finish the podcast.
Well, like I said, if you happen to remember any, and down the road, if we ever do a part 2 or anything, I guess you can share them then. But sure. But yeah, no, I think we all have a similar one, kind of like what you said, though. It's just, I guess it'd be safe to say then that even though you have fun doing all of this stuff, that at least that particular moment in time, that particular species definitely probably wasn't your favorite, I would say, right?
Yeah, it now left the stigma.
Yeah. Well, odds are you probably won't go back to flying a lanner anytime soon, I guess. Yeah,
right? They're fun birds to fly. Here in South Africa, we've, we're a sub-Saharan climate, so we have hot thermal weather, and that's their bread and butter. They're not a peregrine that's going to power its way up, or a hybrid, or something or a prairie, or that's going to power its way up to 1,500 foot, and it's the old saying, you give a lazy guy a difficult job because he's always going to find the easiest way to do it, and that's a lanner for you. It's lazy, but it's incredibly clever. And if you have the right conditions to fly them, in thermals, in late afternoon, nice warm weather, and that they perform incredibly well. And they're not a bird that would come down and bind to its quarry. They love to strike, and the passage birds have got incredibly good footing. And they're bird specialists out in the deserts, so they're a fun bird. I suppose if you have to fly one in the UK or in very cold, clement weather in the States, you're not really going to see any of its potential, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, to each their own, and you're probably right. I mean, and unfortunately, it's something that we don't get to really experience because we obviously don't have them there except for breeding projects.
Yes,
But yeah, that's one species I do look forward to seeing sometime over the next couple of days. Like I said, because of the weather, it's been kind of a tough week, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think we can go ahead and wrap this up here shortly, and I want to do the same thing like I have been and now for a good while, and get the best piece of advice that you might be able to come up with for either current or aspiring generations of falconers, and we can go ahead and call it good.
Good. Sure. Piece of advice. Well, if I have to get a look back at everything and encompass it in a short, sharp, kind of to the point thing, I would say dedication and consistency is two things that have got to stick with you from the beginning. And it's not a hobby or something that you do on the weekends. It's a lifestyle. If you want to achieve anything, and if you're going to put the bird's welfare first, it's going to have to be a lifestyle. It's going to have to be something that you're totally dedicated to, and only when you actually are around and are involved with or under the mentorship of someone who has that kind of outlook and attitude do you really see what it takes to kind of stick it out for the long run and be successful and have the full enjoyment of falconry, So yeah, that would be my bit of advice.
Very cool. Well, like I said, thanks for agreeing on kind of short notice. I mean, I know you just got here and unpacked.
No problem. Yeah, it's sort of Andre just said to me, "You must be here at 2:00. What's happening? How's it? I don't know. Go and talk to John."
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most important thing was that you brought my Kraken.
There we go.
And, without that, I'm not sure. I probably would have had to blacklist you from doing this.
Well, it's cold and rainy and miserable and whatever outside, so at least I could bring you something to warm you up.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. And, we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. Hopefully we'll get a chance to get out and have some fun. And if not, well, yeah, there's always Kraken and
good shit.
And beer, I guess, right?
Great. Yeah, no, it's always good to get together. And if the weather's really bad, you can always sit and swap notes and talk about birds for hours and hours and hours, Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes just, maybe tell and listen to a few lies too, I guess, right?
There we go. Just small white lies, yeah.
All right, bud. Well, like I said, thanks again. And
awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, and appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's been fun.